Have you had a good week so far?
Yeah, it's been a bit on the tiring side, but it was good. Hold on, I think Josh wants to join us.
Sweet. Oops.
Hey Josh, how's it going?
Oh, hello there.
Hey, I moved you over because
Well,
we're gonna talk here.
yeah, okay.
What's the latest going on with you?
Say that one more time.
I said, what's the latest going on with you, Chief?
Well, work with the DSA local chapter and local communities, kind of helping out folks locally and stuff, and been going to local community events in support of immigrants to see what the public reaction's like, what's going on in town. It's been very, very interesting and busy, I have to say.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. You've been to some of the protests?
Yeah, actually. We had a student strike and general protest this last Friday. Had like at least 50 to 60 students. I'm gonna go with more like 50 maybe. At like a really small private college over here in Iowa come out, which was a pretty sizable number, especially considering it's
Impressive.
organized in like 2 to 3 days. And then we had about like
Nice.
another 100 community members come out with us, or 150.
It's impressive. I'm glad.
Yeah. And then a local church did some legal observer training and such, and there was at least a few hundred people there, and they were not happy with the government, to say the least. People of all ages and sizes and everything that you could say, like all completely different folks, other than the fact that they didn't like the government. That was uniform.
Yeah.
Rock and roll liberty. Yeah. That's good to
I was
hear.
gonna say, I mean,
Yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, yeah, I've seen that a lot of like, there's been a lot of student walkouts lately, in regards to ICE, and I was actually talking with somebody on TikTok today, and I said, for all the bad that there is with Donald Trump, if there's anything good that has come out of this administration as a byproduct, not directly, but as a byproduct of how this administration has been, it's really, in a lot of ways, unified at least the left, right? The left has come out. It's very hard on the left to really try to draw in a lot of people that, because we have so many different diverse ideologies on the left between liberals and socialists and Marxists and
This is
communists.
Black
And
Mesa. Sorry.
yeah, like it tends.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. It tends to kind of get the point where we get like divided, and this administration has gotten such a really bad, taken such a bad stance on immigration and, foreign affairs and things like that. It's really unified the left, and furthermore, I think it's unified the country in a lot of ways. Where, for example, there's certain issues like the economy, I think, where a lot of people, polls are showing a vast majority of people are not comfortable with how they're feeling on their economic situation. A lot of people are very opposed to how ICE is handling their stuff. So it's not looking good for the Trump administration in terms of polling.
The one I was gonna say, the one saving grace of Trump is that he's very stubborn and he is incredibly like incompetent at this. Like, if you think Trump is bad, I'm terrified. Like, the number one person I'm most terrified of is Tucker Carlson. I'm sincerely like, like, if he gets presidency, I think I'm gonna have to like.
I don't think we're gonna see a Republican president for the next 4 years, or
I,
well, in the next election. I don't think that's gonna really be. I mean, like never say never, but wow, like we'd have to have someone really bad, and they'd have to have someone that is perfect and like completely fundamentally changes the Republican Party for another time.
no, I agree, but yeah, I was. If it could be like, I'm just so glad that Tucker's not the president, because if he was president, it would be just unmitigated disaster for this country. Oh my gosh.
Imagine if Stephen Miller was.
I somehow feel like Tucker Carlson's worse. I don't know why. I feel like he's just so I just there's something there's something about him. He's deceptive. I don't know. Even like
I
Dave
guess
Fuentes
that's
got
a
like
fair point.
freaked out. I don't know. Maybe I'm just
Because I mean, Miller is so obviously evil that like
True.
you even just see him on the news for like 15 seconds, and you're immediately like, "Uh-oh, this guy wants to like murder a child." And then Tucker Carlson though, like he's a good charlatan.
That's for sure. Oof. Anything in the news that you guys are American politics alternate really quickly between Republican and Democrats? Seems like one time every party wins 48 years since. Yeah, we go back and forth a lot in this party. We go between Republican and Democrat just back and forth. That like, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like it's hard to do anything long term, but
Well, we've had some, the one thing we've seen is like Texas. It's amazing to watch how when we actually have like a good chance at actually turning Texas blue, it never leave it to be that we would see drama take place with the
Oh, yeah.
Democratic Party, right? So to give a little bit of background to everybody who hasn't been paying attention, so what happened is
Okay,
a
well, let's see.
TikToker ended up coordinating with allegedly a campaign staffer of Tallarico to sit down with Tallarico during what was considered a creator block. She alleges that she had met with Tallarico and that Tallarico was very supportive of LGBTQ people, DEI, and things like that. And then out of the blue, he mentioned that Colin Allred was a mediocre black man. That is what was alleged, and Tallarico's campaign came out and said it was grossly taken out of context, and that what Tallarico was saying was that Colin Allred ran a mediocre campaign. And so that was the kind of the TLDR, that there was a longer-winded statement than that, but that was the long story short of it. And then when you dig into the TikToker's background, it's very critical of Tallarico. There's a lot of shade thrown towards Tallarico. When Politico did an article on this and reached out to her to name the campaign staffer, she was unable to provide the name of the staffer who she was working with to meet with Tallarico. So there's a lot of different claims being thrown out there, and I think it has done extreme harm to the Texas race in a lot of ways. Because now what you have done is you have isolated into two groups now. Mm-hmm. We saw this with Kamala Harris, with the progressives and the liberals, right? And you're seeing the same thing play out now. Now it's you have to choose a side, right, if you're on the left. And those who are going to side with Jasmine Crockett are not going to necessarily side with Tallarico. And I'm concerned that that's going to play into the midterms. We'll see. We're still several months away, so hopefully this can just move on and there not be so much. But that's just kind of what happened over there with that stuff. So
yeah, it's
yeah.
No, you go first.
I was to say, yeah, I get what you mean. Like, I was kind of like looking at I watched the primary debate they had hosted by the AFL-CIO, and like, despite the fact that the debate itself was very polite and orderly, I had a feeling mud was going to start flying soon and probably come from Crockett's campaign first, because at least the feeling I get every time I look at Crockett's campaign is it's based off of identity politics. And when you have identity politics, I mean, that's about a smear fest, you know. It's not about policy or like bringing institutional change and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of the issue, right? Which is that this campaign and this, by the way, this TikTok creator, I want to be very, very, very clear. I am not accusing the TikTok creator of collaborating with Jasmine Crockett's campaign. What I will say is if what is said is true, that she was coordinating with the Tallarico campaign, and she herself said that she alleges that she was very open about both sides. It would stand to reason that it's likely she was in coordination with the Jasmine Crockett campaign as well. I don't know how far that reaches. I'm not going to make an accusation that I don't have any backup of evidence for. But I think what we've now seen is that Texas has been divided on this. I'm hoping we can get past this. I've seen some really, really ugly rhetoric being espoused because of this. When I've engaged on debates on TikToks, I do that quite frequently. I have seen where if you take the stance of Tallarico and you happen to be of a lighter skin tone, we ourselves are eating ourselves alive. Okay, I'll just put it that way. It's terrible to see what's happening, and I hope we can just move on from this. And whatever candidate we have, we all rally behind it.
True.
As far as whoever's the better candidate, it depends on your strategy. I think both are excellent candidates. However, if you're gonna pick Crockett, you better focus on the grassroots. You're gonna lose independents. They're out of the play. They're out of the picture. If you think you have enough Democrats in Texas to pull it off, go for it. It is the midterms, so you have an advantage there. But if you're not able to do that, and you think that it's better to win over some independents because that's what Tallarico is really baking it on, then go Tallarico. I could see it going either way, but this divided shit ain't gonna work because you're already, and that eliminates the one section of Crockett, right? If your idea behind the strategy is that you got to rally all the Democrats, well, you've already divided half the Democrats already. So yeah.
I will say, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think you can really win Texas through just base voter support. I mean, I'm currently pulling up the specific percentages based off of like a party affiliation and such, but the last special election district that we saw in Texas, for example, was majority Republican, then Independents, then Democrats. Democrats won that district because there is a substantial part of the MAGA voting base that's willing to occasionally vote for progressive policies or just against the Republican Party when it betrays them. And Texas, we've tried a lot of times to like rally out the blue vote. We've tried a lot of different strategies, but I don't think we're going to see any gains just trying to appeal to specifically traditional Democratic Party voters. Not saying that we need to not go progressive. I think there's actually a reason to go progressive with our policies and such. But
I felt that same sentiment.
You need a broad coalition.
When you say progressive, do you mean socially, economically, or both?
Primarily economically. Of course, you have to defend people's rights and basic living and such. But the thing is, the campaign needs to primarily talk about economics above all. And also probably our systems of power in Congress. In my opinion.
I think that's a valid opinion. I think what you said was you hit the nail right on the head. And this is why I told people when I was debating this, I said, look, I think that the best case scenario to win it is Tallarico. I do think I could see both candidates, but the most likely case here, let's be very honest, is that Tallarico wins over the independents. And the progressives are like, they want to push the progressive candidate, but I keep telling everybody, I'm like, you're not going to be able to do that in a state like Texas, at least not right now, right? Like, let's get across the board, okay? Maybe we get a Fetterman light if that's the argument against Tallarico, fine, right? But guess what? We've now turned Texas blue. Now we can open up the door to some progressive or some Democratic policies that maybe Texans are like, oh, hey, this isn't actually all that bad. And maybe they do something that's meaningful to turn it around. I think Tallarico definitely has that capability. And I think that we're in an election year that I think that people lose sight that there is an alternative. There's another person on the other end, which is the opponent. And that alternative is Ken Paxton or John Cornyn. And I don't think that those are going to be candidates you want to see sitting in the Senate right now when we're trying. Yeah, especially not Ken Paxton. I don't know if Ken Paxton's running, but I believe he said something about it.
I think he is.
And so this is something. Yeah, so I think this is something that people have to keep in mind. It's like, oh, well, I'm willing to take that risk. You're willing to take, like, you can't sit here and tell me on one breath that we're in such dire straits that we have to do this, but then on the other side be like, yeah, I'm willing to take a risk. Why are we taking a risk? Like, if it's so dire, you want the Democratic Party to hold the powers of Congress, you know?
No.
You know, I actually have an opinion on how to tell a litmus test for a candidate and whether or not you should support them. And it's one of the easiest things you can do. You go and you search up their campaign page, right? And then you see if the issues tab's on there and if it's in the first three things. I cannot describe to you how many candidates don't have a tab where they describe the issues they're running on, including Jasmine Crockett. they only talk about why they specifically are running for Congress, and it's typically just like all about specifically them. And I don't think I honestly think Talarico is probably the more progressive candidate because he's actually running specifically on progressive policy and only progressive policy, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I heard this claim too about the issues page, and you're right. I mean, I go in here and I mean, there's no issues page. There's an about page, but the about page is just kind of like her biography more than anything. And I would agree with you. I think this is problematic for Crockett. The
Yeah.
fact that she doesn't have an issues page at all.
Do you know who didn't have an issues page and drew me nuts? Afton Ben in Tennessee did not have an issues page either. I was like, what am I looking at?
Gosh, could have easily gotten like at least 1% of the vote right there with that. Come on.
And like I said, we'll see what plays out in Texas. I'm hoping we get past this drama and we can move on, especially from
I mean, we will.
you know,
we've got so many months.
yeah. So I think it can happen, but we'll see. I think there's a lot of key issues going on right now that are going to upset a lot of people, and I think there's some things that can really twist things around too, which is the Iran thing. And I'll wait for David. David says he's going to be coming in at about 8 o'clock Central Standard Time.
Top of the hour, yeah.
So, yeah, so about 5 more minutes, and that'll probably be when I like dip out. But I think there's a lot going on. We've seen over the past week. I know we missed last week, but over the past couple of weeks, actually, we have seen Trump now talk about, well, not Trump himself, but Steve Bannon mention about putting ICE officers in at polling locations and saying that that's going to happen and you can cry about it. And then we've seen Trump take ballots from Georgia. See, the problem is deeper than even that, right? It's the confidence in our election system. Perfect time. David just jumped in. So
Ew.
it's the confidence in our election system that they're going after. And, you know, it's just like putting the ICE officers. When you put ICE officers at a polling location, yeah, like, are they going to watch over your shoulder marking a ballot? Not yet. I say not yet, jokingly, obviously, because it may
That's not the
happen.
point, though.
Right.
The point
right.
is to intimidate black and brown people. And I can say
Right.
that right now because just the other day I went to a visual and escort outside of the local DHS center, right? Something interesting is since the moment the community started publicly watching DHS appointments and stuff, all of a sudden the arrests would stop until, except for like 1 or 2 a day, which they do at the end when the crowd mostly disappears. I feel like it's to prove a point, but they intentionally go out into these areas and they scare the shit out of people, and it's targeted off of race now, especially after the Supreme Court ruling that marks that race
Yeah.
is a actual reason that you can just pull someone over and be like, oh, hey, you know, you look like you could be illegal. Give me your papers.
Insane.
Like
That was ridiculous. I hope that the Supreme Court will realize that they have to overturn their decision there.
Well, we'll see if the
Yeah.
Voting Rights Act even continues to stay, because from what I hear, was it Kavanaugh just forced all of his aides to sign NDAs, and that ruling should be
Yeah.
coming out soon.
Oh, boy.
But when it
Well-
comes to the fact of ICE officers deploying near voting booths, because they're already going after and harassing citizens, that is solely to discourage and to scare black and brown people from voting. And if we ever see that, I think we need to start. I mean, I don't know what the election laws are in different states, but perhaps local people need to show up and be in between with ways to defend themselves.
Yep, absolutely. And I want to point out, of course, and I think this is where Trump is taking this playbook from, that this is what Putin does in Russia. If there's an area that's likely to vote against him, then the military will be there, and they will be the ones handing out the ballots, and guns will be pointed. Also, they go a step further, and if they're actually counting ballots, then blank ballots are counted in favor of whatever it is that the Putin government wants.
Yeah,
But,
it's
you
pretty
know.
crazy. I mean, I think that's kind of the crazy thing too, is like, think about where we're at. We're like the federal government. It's like what's happening with Trump, it's hilarious because I remember this same rhetoric being used when they would sit there and go, if Kamala Harris gets elected,
Yeah.
we're going to have an authoritarian takeover. And like we're watching that play out in real time. And it's like you write a list of what's happened in the past year, guys, and we tend to lose track and be like, oh, wait, I forgot that happened, right? Like sometimes I'll sit here and forget that we had Doge, and that was really only like a year ago. But we could go back and look. Trump invading countries, talking about taking sovereign land, talking about taking over Cuba, Greenland, Panama Canal, Mexico, Canada, you name it. There's rumors, by the way, that he's possibly going to be trying to take over Alberta. He's allegedly, rumors are that he is working with the separatist movement of Alberta. So that's one. We have the voter where he's trying to nationalize elections. He's trying to do the voter ID through the SAVE Act. He's trying to do National Guard, and then we have him sending the military onto our streets. This is insane.
It's not.
Yeah.
It is.
You also missed. You also missed Kamala. You know, the somehow Donald Trump being a communist and buying stocks. The government now
Staking
owns
company?
10% of
In
Intel.
Yeah.
And like that was supposed to be like the most communist thing imaginable, and it wasn't done by
Yeah, and
Zoran
you know-
Mamdani. It wasn't done by Vice President Harris. It was done by Donald
I'm not
himself.
Kamala Harris's biggest fan, but I have to give her credit that her actual presidential platform that pretty much nobody read was one of the most free market platforms we've seen from any presidential candidate in my lifetime.
Yeah, and I think that kind of just ended up pissing off everybody because you had people who wanted either economic populism under Trump to some extent, or they just hate the left, and then you have people on the left who want economic intervention, and there was nothing there.
You know,
prove that
I
out.
think that most people didn't read it, and a lot of the people who did read it, like myself, weren't sure that we really believed it because of, Kamala Harris's history in California. But I was glad to see it was out there, being
I
honest.
guess. I mean, she also just talked about her economic policy a lot, and she seemed very clear that she wasn't going to really do much with the economy, especially anything to help folks out, at least in the way that I know a lot of people on the left around me feel like they want to happen. So it was also kind of like, well, what'd she do with Biden, So I guess in both ways, people were not happy with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, but there wasn't. Yes, on the far left, there was some pushback. They weren't happy, but overall, not just from Middle America, but mainstream Democrats didn't push back on it. I think overall it was fairly well liked. She just had too much baggage from Biden.
I'm gonna be honest. I think rather people just chose enough to complain because if they complained about Harris, it'd be viewed as supporting Trump.
Well, you know what? That didn't stop a lot of people. Look how many of the pro-Palestinian crowd didn't vote for Harris because she tried to cut it down the middle, right?
Well, right now I'm talking about more so populist left / center left who want economic intervention similar to Sanders or FDR type policy, but aren't, quite like what you're describing.
There was a lot of the far left, whether it was kind of the Greens, the Jill Stein coming out of the woodwork every so many years, right? Who found one reason or another not to support Harris that was laughably a joke, because on every one of those issues, Trump was 100 times worse, right?
Yeah.
And again, like me, you can be like me. Like, yeah, I'm not enthused by a Harris presidency. I have lots of reasons to complain about her. But I absolutely recognize this was not an equal playing field. Right? Trump was way worse by any measure. And we knew he would be way worse on like every issue by any measure. So if you believe that Kamala Harris was evil, she was by far a lesser evil.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, isn't it
just-
kind of? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and I just think there was a lot of You know, I think a lot of it was foreign involvement, where you have like these Iranian TikTok channels that were encouraging people not to vote for Harris because they wanted things in America to get worse, right? You know, these Russian bots and troll farms that we see all over Twitter and Facebook that were coming from a left perspective and encouraging people not to vote as a way to support Trump and make America worse. And people have to really get more savvy. All Americans of all political views have to get more savvy that in this modern internet world and AI, it is easy to manipulate things. And we have to be more savvy to what's authentic and what's not.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to me because, like, when you're talking about Kamala Harris was objectively the better candidate, I've said this before. It's funny to me because it's like you look at some candidates, right? Like if we were to look at Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama, you know, there might have been some things that we looked at with, say, Barack Obama that we would say wouldn't happen under Romney and be like, I don't know. It may have happened with both candidates, right? I think there's some things, though, that we could point at and go, no, I know for a fact that Kamala Harris would not have invaded Venezuela. I know for a fact she would not have double tapped this boat. I know for a fact that she would not have isolated the entire country. So, like, in terms of that, like, most of the time, and in a normal presidency, we're complaining about economics and how, well, it's this or that. And, you know, you can make an argument it would have happened under either candidate, right, because of the previous candidate. But it's like this one's objective. Like we can all sit here and say, you know, Kamala Harris would not have sent ICE. Kamala Harris would have invaded other countries. She would have not have tried to take over certain. Like it's objective
ICE,
at this point.
everything
Kamala
with
Harris was
ICE.
objectively, yeah, like objectively, Kamala Harris was the better candidate. We would have had a much more normal presidency.
Yeah, I guess.
You know,
the
I
point
think
was
even
I'm sorry.
Republicans are realizing that Kamala Harris would not have told federal agencies, "Oh, what Fourth Amendment? Just go into people's houses," right? And that, you carried a gun in public? Well, we get to kill you, right? Because that's what the MAGA is arguing. And even, you know, conservatives are abandoning ship. Look at Democrats winning in Texas, in gerrymandered Texas.
Yeah, it's shocking.
Hey guys, I got to bounce, but I just want to say I'm definitely interested. I'll keep paying attention to this Iranian thing and what you guys are going to talk about. But I'm going to go spend some time with the wife for her birthday. But I wanted to
Happy
jump in and
birthday.
kind of like give my 30 minutes of voice there. So, but appreciate it, guys. Make sure, hey guys, if you're in the chat, please follow Project Liberal, and if you're on YouTube or X, please hit that like button, okay, and share this out. All right, guys, y'all take care. I'll talk to y'all later.
See ya.
Yeah, have a good night.
So now I guess we can
Yeah,
talk
so-
about. I'm actually very curious what's going on with Venezuela. I kind of forgot that country existed a little bit, and I'm sure so did most of America.
Argentina's asking to extradite Maduro for human rights abuses, crimes against humanity, a lot of legitimate things, and I actually think he may get a more fair trial in Argentina than in the U.S. under the Trump administration.
That's a depressing. Depressing.
Not
but
because Argentina is some kind of bastion of due process,
Trump
just
needs
because
this
we
win.
have gotten so bad.
That is unfortunately a real possibility.
Also crazy how Mangione is increasingly looking like he may just walk due to the sheer incompetency of the federal government.
I've seen it.
Yep.
It's crazy, man. Murder's about to be legal in the state of New York.
I mean, it's not even
It's
like
not-
New York's fault. It's just the government fucking up everything practically
Yeah.
on purpose because they like to make a political show out of things. If they just did their jobs like they're supposed to, it wouldn't be an issue.
And maybe he did commit the murder, but you know, our system is designed that we let 100 guilty people go free before we convict one innocent person. And the federal government is working on a way that would convict lots of innocent people. So if it's between that and, you know, this guy going free, then, you know, he has to go free. Yeah, because it's for those who don't know. Basically, they denied him his right to an attorney. Right? They did not give him his Miranda rights. Not just they didn't read them, he invoked them because he knew them a bit better. He called for his right to an attorney, and they flat outright violated it, and they started searching everything. And it's been ruled so far that his backpack was allowable, but they didn't have any warrants for the things that they did. So it's
Pretty sure they also had their body cameras off during the searches too when they found the weapon.
Yes. Yep.
Which is also like insane.
Which, calls into question. So, for those who don't know, in legal practice, there's what's called a chain of custody, right? So, in order to present something in trial as this was the murder weapon, you have to show all the way back to when it was found that, okay, this is that weapon, that you are presenting the same thing, that it has been under control, it is not tampered with, right? So there's what's called chain of custody procedures. And yeah, when you start saying, oh, hey, we just turn off body cams when we collect evidence, body cams are a very substantial part of proving chain of custody, right? Rather than just taking people's word for it. Which, we're seeing, like every statement from DHS is proving to be a lie. Right?
There's also the whole question of how can they get a fair trial with both state and federal governments trying to make a political
Circus
show
out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're seeing again and again, like every day now at this point, that federal agents can lie and get away with it, that there are no consequences for them, right? So, Kristi Noem absolutely lied about Alex Pretty, right? We all know that. Everybody, not even the right, is really contesting it anymore. There might be reasons or excuses. She gave false statements to the public, right? Nobody has been held accountable. And if you're going to say that, Kristi Noem was given bad information, that's only excusable if she's disciplining, like firing the people who lied to her. But she's not. This is, the federal government lies, and it's okay.
I mean, there's no question about it, though. Like, the government has the current government has absolutely no interest in the public good or public safety, or it whatsoever. Like, there's no even semblance of desire of care by the general public, from I'd say any of the cabinet heads at this point and anyone in the Oval Office.
I think it's more than that, and this is where it's going to come to a head, is that the executive branch is just flagrantly disregarding the other two branches, right? So there was a lot of people noticed in the news this week that one of the government's lawyers asked to be held in contempt so she could get 24 hours sleep. That was not just her daring the judge, because the reason this whole hearing is that the judge found out that ICE had ignored over 70 orders from this judge. I'm not counting all the others around the country where this is going on, ignored over 70 orders to release people who had been arrested on false grounds, right? So these were legal immigrants, U.S. citizens, and he's saying, no, you have to release them. And ICE didn't do it. They continued to keep these people held and fly them around the country to try and hide them. So he called the lawyer, the U.S. government's lawyer in, like, okay, I'm going to hold you in contempt. If you're just disobeying my orders, I can have you put in jail. And the whole thing was just kind of amazing. The lawyer herself, she's actually just basically a temp. She had been moved up from a lower position because they're losing attorneys left and right from resigning because they don't want to be carrying out orders under a criminal administration. But getting back to my main point is that the entire agency has just gone rogue, and it is ignoring the judicial branch, right? Ignoring the conservative judges in the judicial branch. So pretty soon here, the entire judicial branch is going to have to decide if they mean anything at all or if they're just going to be a rubber stamp to the Trump dictatorship. And, these are people who are used to wielding a lot of power, and I don't think they're going to surrender it. I think even though the Supreme Court that has given Trump way too much leeway and really carved out too many loopholes for him, I think they're going to pull it back. I think they're going to have no choice after seeing these abuses.
I mean, we got the Voting Rights Act thing coming up, though, and I for some reason, I got a bad feeling about that. Like, at least 4 of them are going to probably go against how it's currently interpreted.
Yeah, that's not a majority. I think more likely 3. I think that we're seeing some, like Kavanaugh, who are starting to shift their position, realizing that, the Trump administration is going beyond anyone's idea of excess and, just flagrantly disobeying rule of law. But we'll see. Yeah, they definitely have to do something. These next set of decisions from the U.S. Supreme Court are going to be interesting. See whether they keep giving the Trump administration a whole bunch of leeway or not. We'll say that recent decisions, while the Supreme Court has given Trump, stays of lower court orders in their favor, after reviewing the orders, it has not been in the Trump administration's favor lately. So I think that they're starting to push back, and they realize that they gave Trump too much benefit of the doubt.
Better late than
I
never.
do hope that you are correct on how the VRA may go. I choose to be a little pessimistic just in case, prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
Yeah, well,
Understandable.
I can't blame you.
Yeah. What I can say, though, just anyone who's listening, is public approval when it comes to Supreme Court's more important than people realize, especially if we look back in history at times like the Great Depression. When the public in Congress gets pissed off enough about the Supreme Court and it starts to threaten their balance and legitimacy of power, they tend to give before they get taken.
Yes. Yeah, and people don't realize that for all the Supreme Court's power to kind of have the final word, it's a very slow power, and they can't really do much about the American public. We have what's called the court of public opinion for very good reason. That, the courts may make decisions on the law, but if you upset enough people, then they're going to elect people who will change the law, right? Even the Constitution itself can be amended, when there's enough of a change of popular opinion. So, yeah, I think we're cresting on up there.
Someone in the chat wanted us to talk about. Sorry, 709 for missing your comment. Wanted us to talk about how XAI is getting in trouble with France for this AI bikini porn of minors or something.
Oh,
wild
yeah,
like
that terrible
Not
shit.
just France. And actually, that is a very interesting topic. I do want to talk about that.
Elon Musk. Oh, boy.
Not just that. Yeah, but
I mean, with the files now, too, it kind of makes a little bit of sense
Yeah,
why
it's all
nothing's
coming
been done
together.
yet.
because while it's easy to just side against Elon Musk, and of course, Elon Musk is the scumbag who's brought us to this point, I want us to be very careful here when we're talking about fake AI images. Because how do you decide that something is of a minor when it's not of a real person or when it's a modified image, right? You may have people who are adults now and images were used of them. Some of those images that the AI used were when they were a minor. Some of them are when they were an adult. We've got a very blurry and dangerous line here. So this is not excusing what Grok and XAI is doing. This is just caution.
No, I
This-
understand what you're saying. It's partially Ship of Theseus, kind of, and also I get what you mean.
This is, because one of the things people don't realize is that how often, like minors, a young girl may take a photo of herself naked and it gets in the hand of a prosecutor and now she's a child pornographer, right? Because that's the definition of the law. And we have much more free speech in this country than in France and Australia, where they're taking this up. I really wish the U.S. was championing this issue because I believe with our First Amendment protections, it would be a little better. But we are in a dangerous age of AI, and what is real, right? When you're talking about something a computer drew, how do you determine whether it's 17 or 18? Now, I understand that in these images might be more clear cut, but again, how do you determine what the age is of something that is not a real person?
Yeah, and I think at that point, I mean, I think the only solution we're going to end up really getting to is, in part, probably a court. It's probably going to end up being with courts going, oh, well, there will be some reasonable degree or something like that alongside combination of intent. I'm assuming that's eventually where it's going to have to land because I don't think there's any other way you can. There's no way to objectively
Yeah, well, that's
when it comes to AI editing images because, okay, let's say it changes 20% of the image. Well, it's still 80%. That.
when leaving things subjective is very, very dangerous because people will use it against the people they don't like and excuse the people they do. Just as we're seeing with the protection of Jeffrey Epstein and his, and the people around him. It's because he was Jeffrey Epstein and those people are rich and well connected. If it was Joe Dirt in a trailer in Texas, and his trailer home buddies, they all would have fried. Right?
Yeah, right now, for sure. I just had a funny observation. Maybe it's because we already knew of Epstein and Alan Dershowitz's connection to one another, but I'm kind of amused a little bit that, Noam Chomsky seems to have gotten in bigger trouble from the Epstein files than Dershowitz has. I was not expecting that. Alan was already kind of implicated. Now Chomsky is, so he's actually kind of gotten the lame run of the... You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Not quite ready to leave the AI topic, though.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, just this has to be very objectively drawn, or innocent people's lives are going to get wrecked, and they're going to get wrecked on a large scale. So for me, part of this, what's absolutely wrong is using a real person's image without their consent.
Yeah.
Even without the child porn factor, we've got to have a legal mechanism of stopping that. But when we get to something that's truly fictitious, whether it's a human being or a computer that's drawing a completely fictional character, how do you decide what the age of that character is? Where do we say that this is illegal and harmful, and who's the victim, and this is okay?
I mean, well, AI obviously takes pre-existing data information, which is already interesting enough when it comes to this issue. I think that, I mean, I think the best way to kind of deal with it is if it looks like child pornography, treat it like child pornography, right?
I know when I see it.
I disagree because I don't think we even handle that well in the U.S. right now, right? Because, how can you look and tell the difference between a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old? Who's going to be drawing that line, and how are they going to do it objectively so that innocent people don't get caught up in it?
I guess, how do we deal with how do we do with fictional writings and drawings and stuff? How does that already handle in the United States? because I don't know anything on this topic. This isn't something I would be looking at in my free time.
Same as well.
I'm not an expert, but I believe for the most part it's legal, actually. Nobody wants to touch that stuff. Like, if you're trying to sell something like that, Amazon's going to delist you, right? So it's largely handled by society, in my opinion. I don't know, and there's probably some states and cities where something else applies, but federally, I believe it's legal.
I mean, how would you feel about a general ban on AI producing pornographic materials of individuals? I feel like it's a bit all-encompassing, but
so if you are feeding an actual person's image into it, you need to have their consent, right?
Yeah.
And you need to have their consent on how it's used, not just blanket. Oh, this person put a photo on Facebook, so now I can make porn of them, right?
Was there any way
you
to
need
have
to
a
have
system
consent
that
to use it
makes
in that
sure
way?
it required?
Sorry, I talked over you a little bit.
Like, I don't even like. Is it even possible to make a system where that can't be easily bypassed? How do you have a secure chain of custody of consent into all the AI platforms?
I believe it's pretty
isn't
easy,
bypassed.
actually. You just need to have knowledge of what the rights are on it, and you can already go into a browser for images, and it'll tell you if you drill down into it what the rights usage is for most images, right?
Well,
You
I'm
can go
talking
Google
about in
clip art.
general creation, right? Because the creation isn't
Yeah.
just look at one image. At that point you would have to have the AI be able to reliably detect a specific individual and then blacklist that individual from appearing like that. And then we get into the question of identical twins as well.
I think
right?
I don't think we're ever really going to be able to control AI outputs in a way with the technology. I think we have to control the inputs. So it's what we're feeding into it. Can you use this image for this purpose, right? Can the AI use this image, right? And the problem is right now that a lot of these AIs just treat anything they can find on the internet as fair use for any purpose. And that's not true. That's not even legally true right now, right? Certain, we have libel, slander, fraud rules. You cannot misrepresent someone's image, right? So there's artistic license. You can make fun of someone, but you can't, make a likeness of someone and put them in a compromising act and pretend it's real when you know it's not, right? That's fraud to the audience, and that is slandering the person you're making the image of. That you are civilly and in some courses criminally liable for that. And we have been giving AI a pass on that because it's difficult and the law is not yet set up to really identify it.
Well, I think when it comes to slander, though, you have to prove that there was damage done. I believe.
That there is what?
Unless it's just allowed. I
Damages?
believe with slander, you have to prove that there's damage that has been done. That unless it's just good to go. Because unless you can't prove that there's damage, it's just treated as any of the other things you listed.
Well, the thing with damages is that kind of determines how much you get, right? So when you're going to court, you're looking for civil court. You're looking for some kind of award, because in civil court, putting them in jail, detaining them is not really an option. So you're looking for damages, and to get awarded those damages. And if the damages are just $500, then it's probably not worth the cost of going to court.
I mean, I guess I get what you're saying and stuff. I think I end up disagreeing where the endpoint should be, but I get your argument.
But I think we need to have stronger protections in this country, particularly in the age of AI, against those type of illegal acts: libel, slander, fraud, defamation, perjury.
100% agree. Yeah.
And those are types of speech that have never been legal. And unfortunately, it's not just now, but over the last couple decades, protections for them have been weakening. Not because of the law, but because the government just doesn't enforce it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So, and I think, particularly in the age of AI, we need a lot more enforcement. We need to make sure that intellectual property in the form of images is not being stolen and used without consent and fed into these AIs. I know Japan is looking at this very seriously because, people are using their AIs and training them on copyrighted works of manga and anime. So I think we'll see some serious change out of the Japanese government that they will enforce pretty heavily. But the U.S. needs to follow suit. And, unfortunately, we have a generation of legislators who are not just out of touch with modern technology, they're really out of touch with the age of the internet in general.
Fortunately, yeah.
We have senators and representatives who are still working on how to email and surf the web properly, let alone how to use AI.
Here these guys are using fax machines still.
Yeah. Here in Washington State, I laughed at this, and I'm going to pick on my own Democrats. They had a bill where they wanted to prohibit 3D printers that could be used to make a gun part. If you don't know anything about 3D printers, I guess that sounds reasonable. But that is about as reasonable as saying just make paper printers and pencils that can't draw gun parts, right?
Make a hammer that can't hit someone in the head.
Yeah, basically.
It's just that the printer doesn't know what a gun part is. And it doesn't look at the finished result and go, oh, that's a gun part, which, I'm not even sure these legislators could identify half of the gun parts that are out there. And the printer's not like that. It's not looking at a final part. It's working on a coordinate system. Draws from here to there, right? Started at this coordinate, moved to this coordinate. And you can make the same part a bunch of different ways with different coordinates, right? You can draw the same thing. How do you draw a cube? Well,
you can make different types.
There's a bunch of different ways you can teach someone to draw a cube. There's a bunch of different ways that you can teach a 3D printer to make any one part. So it was just a law written by people who have no clue about technology. And, we need these legislators, especially when we want to push back against the insanity of MAGA. We need these guys to have a clue. Yeah. And if you don't have a clue, at least get the support of people who do before you're writing bills.
How would you feel about, because I actually think one of the solutions to this is getting more folks kind of into Congress who are a little more knowledgeable and who actually have to interact with their local constituents more by increasing the size of the House of Representatives, amongst some other reforms, of course. But I recently heard for a proposal that would set it so that about each 500,000 people would be allowed a House of Representatives representative, and that they would have to have one roughly within that range, which would get us to about 645 seats in the House of Representatives. And honestly, that would be an improvement.
We would need a different Capitol building. It would be a big expansion of Congress, more offices, different legislature, because there's a physical cap on things, right? So, and are we going to take over more of Washington, D.C.? And what is the real effect of that going to be? Yeah, we have more people, more voices. Is that going to help business get done more efficiently and better? Are people really going to be better represented? I'm not convinced. Honestly, I think what we really need is to look at some kind of proportional representation reforms, especially with this gerrymandering stuff going on around the country. I do think we need to get the national government involved in kind of standardizing some rules that are fair for everybody. Because right now it's just a race to the bottom. It's hilarious to watch it backfiring on the Republicans. But that said, this is not good for the health of democracy in the long run, by any means.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. Actually, the secondary reform I was thinking of that would side with this is multi-member districts that are voted on by proportional representation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are you a big fan of those? 'Cause
I am.
I sure am.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, and that would get us out of this gerrymandering mess. If a state has 50 representatives, then you vote for the one you want, and if enough other people vote with you, you're getting that person. So states like California would not be so blue, and states like Texas would not be so red. But not just that, you would actually see more diversity of viewpoints within the parties being elected. Right? So you would not just have all MAGA Republicans. You would have a whole bunch of conservative Republicans. You would have not just our progressive Democrat states, but you would have the spectrum of Democrats, liberals, progressive, mainstream. All of them would be there in the proportion that people support them. So yeah, I don't think that's the only method of going about instituting reform, but it's one of the better ones.
I do think we need to start increasing the size of the House, though, because 750,000 as of 2017 was the average size. Some states like Montana and Delaware had close to 1 million people represented by a single House member, and at that point, I mean, that's just insane. Like, I don't see how a house member can actually represent 1 million people and do so effectively, especially when we have some people who are around like 500,000. And if you look historically, I mean, it was back in the 1930s, it was about 250,000 as an average, right? 1950s, it was 350. We're double that now.
Yeah, no, I do think that's more of a valid argument. I'm just not convinced that having 700 instead of 400 something representatives is going to make a better Congress, have a better representation. Some level it just gets messier, and it tends to give more representation to the fringes, which until we fix the current gerrymandering system, which tends to give us very fringe candidates from both parties, I think with our current system, it can be more trouble.
Yeah, I do understand that. I think if we were to implement that reform, it'd have to be done with a bunch of others in a wholesale, like, voting reform act or something.
Because, yeah, particularly while we have these gerrymandered districts in Texas and California, if you give more of them, you're going to get a lot more fringe candidates really fast. You're not going to get a bigger slice of the populace and more representation. You're just going to get a lot more wingnuts.
I would argue that if there is more seats, though, it does make gerrymandering a little more difficult.
I don't think so. No, I think that you can slice that pretty well. If you're skilled at manipulating the map and drawing it and knowing where the people are, then yeah, you can make room for a lot of crazies.
I do agree. I do agree. However, I'd also argue that gerrymandering would be one of the much easier things that I think will likely get banned under the next Democratic president. by God if they're actually a decent one. But we'll see what the primaries give us.
It's going to
Oh, boy.
take more than a presidential election. It may even take a constitutional amendment. I have to look into it. I think it probably would take a constitutional amendment from the national government to ban gerrymandering, because elections are up to the states.
I think it's the manner in which the elections are done, not how districts are are given out.
It's both, really. Now, there have been some limitations, right? There's Voting Rights Act, because the one limitation was you couldn't go against the 14th Amendment, right? You can't gerrymander in such a way that you're districting out certain races or genders, right? Or trying to discriminate people based on a 14th Amendment protected status, right? But say something like sexuality, that's not protected under the 14th Amendment. So if you wanted to create the gay district or the anti-gay district, Supreme Court has no basis on which to throw that out.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't want to shift too much, but I do want to hear about if, David, you have any updates on Venezuela or Iran. I'm very curious about what's going on.
Iran in particular, things are really bad for the people there. Basically, the government's troops are just going into hospitals all over, shooting anybody who's gotten even minor injuries from having scuffles with the police and the military. Because they've locked down the internet there, we don't know what the real death toll is. But it's certainly in the tens of thousands of civilians that have been murdered by the regime, and possibly a lot more. So
I'm told
it is
20,000
bad.
is the floor.
It is atrocious. I think the other really big thing that happened this week is that Iran sent a drone against a U.S. aircraft carrier. Now, this was one drone. It could have done damage and killed some people, but it wasn't going to take out the carrier. And we launched an F-35 and, blew it up. It wasn't a real threat on its own. But I wouldn't call it a win, because we used a multi-million-dollar jet and $1 million missile to stop a drone that cost a few $1,000s. A single one, right? So it's not the effectiveness of a bullet that you worry about. It's the effectiveness of an army with rifles and lots of bullets, right? And the fact that we had to use this kind of a system is actually probably, if you're the Ayatollah, is a good sign. People don't realize that while we have aircraft carriers, the Iranian government built one of the world's first drone carriers that can launch thousands of drones at once. So I don't think they'll try something serious like that. They don't want to provoke, but they did want to test, right? And while the administration is saying, ha ha ha, look at how we destroyed this, this primitive attack at one of our aircraft carriers, our choice of defense showed that we don't really have a tool to effectively combat this at scale. Right? If you launch 1,000 drones on an aircraft carrier, you cannot launch 1,000 F-35s to defend against it from the aircraft carrier. They cannot launch 1,000 missiles. There are other defenses. They do have other ways of stopping it. But I would not call this deterrence by any stretch.
Sorry to go back to this, but I was just doing a bit of reading just to double check, because I haven't read article on the Constitution in a while. I don't think the Supreme Court would be able to overturn a gerrymander, like a ban on partisan gerrymandering, though. And my reasoning for this is it states specifically the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives is prescribed to the state and the legislator of the state.
Correct.
but that Congress can at any time by law make or alter regulations of those elections. So I think a ban on partisan gerrymandering would not contradict the times, places, or manner of the elections. But I guess that would be kind of open to the Supreme Court, but I doubt they'd really have the leeway to really do much, especially in the court of public opinion as well.
I see a legal argument to be made on both sides, but I think with the current makeup of the Supreme Court, they would probably come down in favor of the states.
Perhaps.
And I hope that I'm wrong. Let me say that, maybe I'm being the pessimist now.
But, certainly, I hope Democrats try when they have the majority again. This is fixed. The crazy state gerrymandering, this is not representing the people. This is not a proper democracy, and it needs to be fixed, along with many other things. Let me get up on my soapbox. Again, I'm going to rant against my leftists because I see a lot of people wanting to take over again and be the reverse MAGA. And no, we need to take over and make it so that these kinds of abuses are no longer possible by any administration of any party in the future. Otherwise, it's just a matter of time, right? If you make it possible, if we leave that tool out there, it is going to be used against us at some point in time.
So, there's a bit of a question on clarification. What specifically do they say, and what do you think is meant by that? Because I've heard a lot of different arguments and thoughts, and I have some very particular thoughts on how the next president needs to approach the powers that have been used and abused. But I want to first understand, your perspective.
Yeah, I'm seeing calls, certainly by more fringe, not mainstream Democrats at all, but calls to, get in power and turn the IRS and the ATF against the Republicans the way that ICE is being unleashed on people right now. And I'm absolutely 100% against that. I will side with the Republicans against those people calling for it. We need to dismantle any agency that is violating constitutional power, violating due process. ICE is violating pretty much everything. And I'm good with abolishing them and starting over. We had that discussion 2 weeks ago. We should not be seeking to obtain the same power and use it against our enemies. Again, you create the weapon, it's going to be used by someone at some time, right? You leave a loaded gun out on the table, and it's in a busy room. People are walking in and out because we have elections. Every couple of years, we have elections. People are out, new people are in. At some point, that loaded gun is going to be picked up and used against people, right? So you take it away, you destroy it, and then it can't be used against anyone.
I generally agree with that. I do think there should be a bit of a more specified, I guess, that in the sense that clearly things such as ICE that actively attempt to violate the Constitution and such, and our Bill of Rights and things like that, and are violent and aggressive, those need to be dismantled and such, not utilized. However, I do think the broad presidential powers and pressure over Congress and use over government agencies and stuff will need to be used by the next president, not as I'm going to use this solely for my own power, but as a sense of we need to use this power to reform Congress, to begin pushing power back into Congress. Because, if Trump goes in and he, turns the Fed, for example, into a completely partisan organization and stuff to the best of his ability, he can't just walk in and be like, okay, well, I'm not going to touch it now, even if it's completely partisan against me. Like we have to utilize all of the legal tools that have been prescribed to the presidency, even if we disagree with those. To
Legal
move
tools.
power back. Yes, legal tools.
Legal tools.
To move
That
power
is-
back to the way we think it should be.
I agree with you to an extent. Heavy emphasis on legal tools, those which have been highly abused for highly illegal purposes, like ICE. We need to get rid of, restructure. Some, like the Department of Justice, highly weaponized, and we are going to weaponize it against the criminals, right? Against the ICE that is abusing the law. We have to go after those who have abused their government power, right? We're not going to go after everyday Republicans, right, who are just voters, who maybe even support this from their couch, but are not taking part in committing crimes themselves, right? We're going to go after people legally, and we are going to reform these agencies so that these types of abuses cannot happen again. And if they cannot be reformed, we will break them apart and we will reform them where they have essential duties to do only those essential duties.
Yeah, I kind of think, for example, like the president's current power over a lot of these agencies and such that we have that congressionally regulated and oversought, and just aren't, and we need to
I
be able to
agree.
utilize those to the best of our ability to transform the way that these organizations work and function, and to fix Congress.
I
So
will
we
be
really
right
do need a
back.
president
Hello,
that's
Iron
willing
Minx.
to use the presidency's tools to its maximum ability, which was something that I was quite happily surprised to hear Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez actually talk about recently, where she actually made an argument very similar to mine publicly, in which she emphasized the points that we're both agreeing on.
Oren's hitting a time limit here. Yeah, no, I agree as well. There's a lot that needs fixing. I do think we have overly relied on Congress to be a check and balance. I think we need more power to the people, particularly in our courts of law, in order to stop these executive agencies that have gone too far. I will, get up on my soapbox for an old cause that I have championed for many years and saying we need to end qualified immunity. We need to pass the law that says it isn't there, and that everyday people can sue these ICE agents who abuse their rights, right? Nobody in our country should enjoy legal protection to knowingly violate someone's constitutional rights. And so that has to be ended. That needs to be taken up. And too many Democrats have given it lip service while protecting qualified immunity, right?
Indeed.
I'm quite upset this week because we have congressional Democrats who are now going back and saying, oh, maybe we'll still allow ICE to wear some masks. Like, no,
Oh,
no.
God.
It's abused. Take it away. Stop it. End it.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of establishment Democrats here who are honestly in support of a lot of these more authoritarian practices imposed by the Trump administration, which is interesting. I kind of have a feeling that for some reason a lot of establishment folk in the Democratic Party see I don't know what their freaking plan is or what their view is, but they seem to really just support this weird, like, oligarchic government authoritarian mix, and it's just so disgusting.
Some of them.
It's like all. I just I just feel like there's this weird obsession with like stability, and especially like like surveillance companies like Palantir, for example, too, where it's just like I don't get it, you know, like there's something weird.
The thing with power is that too many people don't object to having power over others. They just want to be the ones to wield it. And I think that's true of a lot of in Congress as well, is that they don't object that the power exists for, that ICE can go in and violate people's Fourth Amendment's rights and not be held accountable. They just object that they're not the ones abusing it. And I'll say, we have to own things up. Democrats abused this in the 90s. Ruby Ridge, Waco, Texas. If there had been more legal accountability for that, then we might not be where we're at today with Trump, right? And with what ICE is doing. And we have to fix it. Can't be a left versus right thing. It's just going to spiral out of control in this country. We have to completely rein these agencies back in and make them more directly accountable to the people. And I think the way to do that is to make them more liable to lawsuit, and put it more in the hands of the judicial branch than just waiting and hoping that Congress will do the right thing.
I mean, they already lose to the courts, though. So at this point, I mean, I feel like to a certain degree the courts are doing their jobs, and it's Congress that's not. And I think the only way you can actually change that is by changing the systemic balance and distribution of power in Congress. Like, Congress is supposed to be representation of the people, but it has been for decades. I think everyone here can agree on that. So we have to change that system to make it so it is people. And that's not impossible. Unless at that point we determine that democracy may be impossible. But I frankly don't believe that.
No, I don't. And I don't think there's any better alternative to it.
Indeed. It's the best, worst form of government.
Yep. Uh, 2026, buckle up, get involved. Things are not going to change just because you sit back and do nothing. Get involved with groups like Project Liberal. We have to be the change. So if you're angry about all of this, good. Now do something about it. It doesn't even have to be Project Liberal, right? Just, get out of your chair, sign up for something, take action. It's not enough just to vote. Do more.
Yeah, no, I have to second on to that. Your communities are out there, dude. They're doing things. Oftentimes not even public. Went to some events recently, and people got Signal group chats. They hand out links. They hand out invites. Find those folks. Help them. People need it. Primaries are going to come around. They're the most important elections out of them all. So be there. Watch, listen. Well, primaries choose the candidates, and then based off the party wins. So the primaries are the most important.
Yep. The primaries pick the candidate. It's easy with the right primary candidate. Any party can win, even often the most difficult district. But if you just let whoever run, and then you wait till the general election to choose from the two choices that are given, there may not really be a choice at all. The primary is what matters.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining me, David, and we will talk soon. Hi, Iron Minx. Thanks for joining us.